And good morning, Bridget Gainer.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you here. Bridget is the commissioner from the 10th District for the Cook County Board. And we've bumped into her a bunch of times at various meetings, and we finally got her on the show. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
Bridget, you are, all, what do they call it when you admit stuff? Full disclosure. Full disclosure, her mom and my sister were like the tightest of friends all during their raising up huge family.
Babysat for her kids.
Yeah, exactly. All of much back and forth with the Gainer family. And I'm just going to put it out there. You are very connected. You're so connected. Okay, like my dad was connected to the previous Mayor Daley. Your dad was connected to Junior. And, okay, how can you prove to us you're not like that?
Welcome to the Heartland. Thank you. Saturday morning, right off the bat.
Right on. Oh, that was
Why
good,
not?
Katie.
Well, I mean, where do you stand? You have, I know you've called yourself, or like the word progressive when you were at the meeting with the 49th Ward Progressive Democratic Party.
So I, being from the 19th Ward, you grow up around politics all the time. You like it. You figure out what it's good for. I got on the board about 4 years ago, but I started my career right out of college. I moved to New York, and I was a community organizer. I worked for a guy named Jeff Canada. So I did a year of volunteer work with the Jesuits, and then I worked in an Alinsky-style organizing group called Neighborhood Family Services, where we went around, through all the schools trying to convince people about and educate them on how to get access to their public schools.
In New York City?
In New York City. I lived in Brooklyn for a year, and then on the Lower East Side. And then I came back here, and Mayor Daley was just starting to look at school reform, but you couldn't get access to your public.
What year was that?
94.
Okay, Mayor Daley was just starting to look at it, but we had already looked at it, in the years. 80s, and he basically dismantled. Anyway, go ahead.
She's answering the question.
Anyway, so the whole thought was, how do you, often in a neighborhood, a school building is the only thing that's lit and heated and set up for after-school programs. So we wrote a grant with Alternatives, which is just down the street here, to open up Senn High School. We did after-school programs, so the grant got funded, and so for 3 years I ran a community center at Senn. ESL, GED, basketball, after-school program.
So cool.
Yeah, it was great. The best thing about it, besides being able to do all those great things and have this great safe space for people to go to, is that, especially in a neighborhood that's changing, like Senn was in the mid-'90s, you had people walk into a public school and kind of look around, and you could tell what was going through their mind, like, hey, this isn't so bad. It's not just filled with people who want to steal my car. So it was it's a way to bring people together in the best
like a true
possible way. It doesn't, you don't have to proselytize to people. They come in, they engage with each other, and it's all good. So
that's great.
Yeah, it was great. And I did that for a couple years, but the interesting thing about being on the county board now, I see it as being in local politics is a lot like being a community organizer, but you actually have a little bit of stick. You have a little bit of power. People have to call you back. You can get something done.
It can be.
Right.
That's right.
So it's 4 years. I focus on three things at the board. I chair the pension committee. I have started a land bank, which is all a focus on vacant land and foreclosure.
Yeah.
And then the third thing is I focus on, we're starting an advisory board at the Juvenile Detention Center because, the Juvenile Detention Center, or the Audie Home, as people who grew up here know of it as being called, is, it's been under federal court supervision for the last 8 years because it got so bad that the ACLU came in, created a lawsuit, and then the federal judge has overseen it. And there's been a, quote, temporary administrator for 6 years.
Yeah.
And so we've put forth that you have a citizen advisory board, including a young person who's there observing what's going on in addition to the management. There are actually a lot of opportunities. You've got, the average stay at the JTDC is about 3 weeks. But in that time, there's an opportunity to do a ton of great things with these young people. And what happens is every time I go there, it's fine. It's better than it was before. Half the kids aren't in school. They're always coming and going at some point. There's huge opportunities that aren't being realized. And the bigger concern for me is, what's to say that once it's no longer being supervised by a federal judge, it's not going to go back to where it was, which is why you need an outside group of citizens who are unconnected to either the employer or, any of those ties that are observing what's going on there.
We have a good friend who teaches at the Juvenile Detention Center, and she does great work with them.
Right, and this is the thing, though. It's run by CPS. It's Nancy B. Jefferson School. There are incredibly dedicated teachers within the structure. Yeah, but the school runs like a regular school, 8 to 2. Why not have it be a longer school day and do other things with those young people when you have them there the whole time instead of sitting up in their residential area watching TV?
Yeah.
That's
good.
I'm going to talk about the progressive stuff.
Okay.
There's a lot of...
I think she just was.
No, she is. And there's a, it remains to be seen what the definition of a progressive is. We have 2 progressive caucuses in the city council. And, one is like votes more with Rahm than the other one does. And I'm just a little bit curious, what is the kind of makeup in the county board between people who you would say are legitimate progressives and people who are maybe may become progressive and people who are downright on the other side of things?
And the county board, there's only 17 members, so it's kind of hard to get into a caucus. And in some ways, people flow in and out of alliances with one another.
Yeah.
There's 5 women on the board. We work together on things from time to time. There's 4 Republicans. There's 5 African Americans. There's 2 Latinos. So people ebb and flow with each other as it goes. Erlene Collins is retiring at the end of this year, and she has been really a voice of truth on the board, especially when it comes to things around criminal justice. So she leads that, without a shadow of a doubt. And, other people come and go more depending on the issue than anything else.
I see in the news that Todd Stroger is thinking about running for the county board.
Both of us girls are coughing.
Yeah, well, and I could talk, but I'm wondering what seat he's running for, who he would be running against, who has that position now.
So you guys may recall that Bill Beavers was removed from his office.
He's going to jail.
He's going to jail on Monday, and so
and he's smiling about it.
Yeah.
We
could talk about him all day.
But we could talk about how those guys go to jail when they go to jail.
Yeah, I said
it actually is a time for them to remember how to read and do push-ups. Maybe
I sat next to Bill for my first year on the county board, and I wish I had a tape recorder because not for the legal aspect, but because there was a lot of interesting conversation. Anyway, that's for another show, not at 9:00 in the morning. So
great.
When he left, Stan Moore was appointed to the board by the committeeman. And that's in the 7th District, which is South Chicago, part of South Shore, that whole kind of old, it's most of the 7th Ward and around that area, some of 8, some of, obviously, the 8th Ward. So Todd could run in that. There's also a couple of other people.
Is the 7th District Orleans?
No, 7th District is Bill Beavers.
Right.
And Todd has, if he filed, the end of filing is Monday.
Right.
So, we'll see.
Yeah, I doubt it.
Hard to say.
And where's Arlene's district? Is that West Side mostly, or?
So her and Robert Steele kind of start both downtown, go out to the West Side, but her district includes all of Oak Park now after redistricting. So there's a couple. Ike Carruthers is running for that seat. He's a former alderman. Richard Boykin, who used to be Danny Davis's chief of staff.
I know Richard.
I think there's a bunch of people running. Those are the 2 that I know of. But yeah.
I'm sure there will be a bunch of people running.
Yeah, there will.
All right, so you were going to talk. I'm going to ask her about the land bank.
That's what I was going to ask her next.
Land bank is a real interesting concept, and I'm happy you're pushing it. I think there's a million possible potholes to fall into in Chicago-style politics way of people glomming on, let me have this contract or that. And it's really about neighborhoods that have been so underserved and so ripped up for all of my entire life, basically. And I liked what I read about, I think it was your letter to the Tribune, about talking about what a neighborhood should look like with a diminishing population that we do have in this city. So talk to us about the land bank project that you're...
So the land bank is, it's a concept that you see around the country. A lot of times you see it in places like Cleveland or Detroit that entered the financial crisis of '08 even weaker than Chicago. So when the financial crisis hit, they were really slammed with vacancy and foreclosure. For us, it really started because 4 years ago, people started calling the office because they were going through foreclosure. They were getting all these letters. They didn't know what to do. So we set up some clinics in the district, and then we got a legal aid program at court. So at least if you showed up and you never had a lawyer, you could have someone kind of decipher all this information for you.
How far north does the 10th district run?
I have the southern half of Rogers Park.
Yeah, that's what I
And so,
thought.
yeah, and then I started around Armitage. I go to the southern half of Rogers Park, and then between Bryn Mawr and Devon, I go all the way west to Cicero.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
so, you know, we started, it was almost like pulling thread from a sweater. You did one thing, and then we started looking at, you know, they never changed the number of judges in foreclosure courts. So while for decades before, we had about 15,000 foreclosures in a given year, and then you had about 15,000 in the system, so they're kind of cycling in and out. Well, if you have 10 judges and the number of foreclosure filings goes up to 50,000 and 60,000 in those bad years,
Right.
well, now we have 75,000 cases sitting in foreclosure. So it takes over 600 days to get a case. So if you're in that house that's sitting next to a vacant house, it's like 2 years before the bank can even get the title to put it on the market again.
Right.
And we all know what happens in that time. Either it gets totally stripped, and even if nothing happens to it, your house is worth less.
That's
so
right.
you were creating like this second victim, which is the person living next to a vacant house. So then we did the vacant building ordinance that said, look, bank, if you issued a mortgage here and you don't have title, you still have to cut the grass and secure the building, put a door on it, you know, do things like that. So at least these people next to you aren't kind of paying for all of what's going on.
Right.
So we did that, and then we started saying, like, look, as much as we're all pissed at the banks, this isn't helping these neighborhoods right now. We got to get a little bit more active, figure out a way to work together to take the next step. And the land bank was something we saw around the country. There's fantastic examples in Cleveland and in Minnesota. So it's a legal entity that can come together and help people take the next step. So we interviewed, you know, in kind of organizer fashion. We probably had 200 different conversations with developers, housing advocates, you know, community organizations, mayors of suburbs. And the big question was, what's kind of stopping more development from happening in some of these communities? Some of them, you know, have huge issues, crime, bad schools, all these other things. But what we heard over and over again from guys who develop in low-income communities all the time, is we're not developing in this community because it's low income. I know that. It's because it's going to take me 2 years to get title. And when I get title, there'll be liens on old water bills and taxes, things that the city hasn't collected in a decade.
Right.
But I don't know what that's going to be. So you know what? It's too risky. I'm going to walk away and do something else.
Right.
So the purpose of the land bank is to kind of get people together. We can hold things tax-free, we can get title, we can eliminate liens, we can do those types of things that can, you know, help at least eliminate some of those obstacles.
Is the city on board with this idea?
Totally.
Yeah.
So the vice chair is a guy named Lawrence Grisham, long time at Habitat. Now he's number 2 at the planning department at the city, runs housing. Emmanuel's been supportive. Their administration's been, a bunch of aldermen, Michelle Harris especially, very
So
supportive.
they understand that they weren't going to get those water bills paid anyway.
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see.
All right, one of the things that the county board oversees, I believe, is the Cook County Jail.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that, you know, I watched Tom Dart, who is trying to get more people released on recognizance or on various lower bonds, because there are a lot of people who are in there who need mental health, you know, attention,
yeah.
as well as people who are in there for small-time drug busts. And I was watching him on television along with Tony Preckwinkle, the president of the county board, and they were talking with Judge Evans, who once upon a time was...
They actually were talking to Judge Evans?
Yeah, on the air, and it was sort of a disaster. You saw the two-
Chicago tonight, yeah.
Yeah,
that's
it was
terrible.
Chicago Tonight. You saw the two of them very concerned, trying to talk, and the judge was, you know, he was strange. I'm sorry we supported him back in the day, but what's your take on that and the county jail in general, and the number of people who are locked up and probably should be out either on bond or recognizance?
Well, there's a pretty credible estimate that, according to the sheriff, that about 40% of people in Cook County Jail have mental illness.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's people who can't function in society. And so they get rearrested for things. They get to court. Bond court, if anyone has ever observed bond court, it's way less than a minute, the average amount of time that someone comes before bond court. And so you end up, you don't have a lawyer, you can't post bond, you get in jail, you kind of cycle through. Now, with the jail being more and more crowded, it's longer and longer until you actually get to trial. So you look at this huge percentage of people with mental illness. The guards at the jail are not equipped. They're not mental health counselors. They're guards at a jail. So the sheriff is trying to run this kind of powder keg of 10,000 people, 1,000 of which are women. Vast majority of women are nonviolent offenders, over 80%. a substantial portion of the men are nonviolent offenders, huge mental illness component. Then, with all of the strictures of the Justice Department kind of coming in and telling you this is the way you need to run a jail, it's a huge, they've got a massive task in front of them. The good news is both Tom Dart and Tony Preckwinkle are really trying to move forward in the right direction.
Yeah, it's been a bit now, and I don't understand. Tim Evans used to be a reasonable guy, I think, but he clearly is not on footing with these two. And when you said that the courts related to the housing stuff were also bollocksed up, are those the same? Are they under the same court system?
It's all under the one system.
Yeah. Okay. So
a lot of people don't pay attention to who their judges are when the election comes around, and that's just something
mistake.
I'm throwing out there.
Yeah.
I
wanted to throw out one other thing.
We can throw out one more question. We love having Bridget Gainer on.
We do.
And we'll have to have her back because we only have a little bit of time for all of our different guests.
Well, it's just the fact of the 40% folks in the jail have mental illness. And, 2 years ago we had the mayor close down the only mental illness support systems that they had in this city.
I think they just reopened one, or they're just opening a new one.
Yeah. They did just open.
Your take on that, Bridget?
Well, we just did, every other year, we do an assessment in Uptown of what are the unmet health needs. So we interviewed about 500 individuals, about 200 providers, either doctors, mental health professionals, nurses, community advocate people, and we just finished the survey. And the number one need, no surprise, is mental illness. That is the hardest medical service for people to get. Yep. They have to travel farthest. It's least able to afford it. And so we know, look, I don't know where this will come down when it comes down to Obamacare, but when we did our assessment along with the Census Bureau of Uptown, there's over 20,000 people in Uptown who have no health insurance and will qualify for Obamacare. And so the hope is that people, we don't have that much time. We're doing a big event December 18th to sign people up either for county care, because, Cook County is having its own kind of healthcare program called County Care.
You should all know about county care. It's easy to sign up for.
Right. So anyway, I'll leave you guys at that, but I'm happy to come back.
We love having you on the show. You've been listening to Bridget Gainer, Commissioner from the 10th District, Cook County Board.
Thanks, guys.
Our neighbor.